All right, everybody, it's 6 o'clock. Tonight is April 25th, 2019. This is the Upper Dublin School District Operations Committee, and I'll call the meeting to order. Welcome, everybody. I guess we can dive right into our first presentation. Are you starting that one, Robin? So, Robin Breslin from Breslin, Rudyard Federo Architects on the Sandy Run Middle School project.
Is it working? Okay. Thank you, Mark. I have with me tonight Michael Ackerman, who's the primary designer for the middle school project. And what we were planning to show you was 3 videos that have been made that I can show you that are good quality. I also have a series of other videos if you're interested in seeing more, but the quality is going to suffer a little bit because of the technology. So the first video that we have is kind of the exterior, just to show you again what it looks like and how it's been developed. There hasn't been any major change since you've seen it the last time. It's just been further developed. So as we come through here, we're looking at the cafeteria to the right, and now you're seeing the 3-story classroom wing. We're kind of flying over Twining Road at this point. We're looking back across the sidewalk towards what the public would see if you were driving by in a vehicle. You can see the 3-story classroom addition. You can see the sunscreens. You can see how effective they are because we've actually modeled this with the actual sun path. So they're shading the classrooms and making the building energy efficient. As we come around, we're over the multi-purpose field, the football field primarily, and you're starting to see now the main entrance to the building. We're coming in on the parent drop-off lane, and you can see the library to the right, the main entrance straight ahead, the guidance portion of administration to the left. And as we fly up over the gym, you can start to see the planetarium volume and the courtyard beyond. You're seeing now the north side of the 3-story classroom wing without the sunscreens because they're not necessary on that side. As we come back across, you're seeing the entrance to the concourse and the cafeteria to the right. And then we're just going to kind of fly up and move out. And with that, I'm going to jump to the inside of the building. If you bear with me for just a second. This would be the lobby, the main entrance. So you're coming through the main vestibule now. Off to the right would be the main administration where you would check in. There's a straight view down the concourse towards the cafeteria. You can start to see out the windows to the courtyard. Now we're looking back into the administrative suite. You can see the waiting area and the main desk. There's the chamber where you check in and go through the security. Now we're going over to the gym, the main gym. And we'll go in and take a quick look around and then come back out to the concourse. The main gym's very simple. It has some nice north light. Now we're back on the concourse, proceeding down towards the cafeteria. The auditorium would be to our left. You're looking out into the courtyard and you can see the 3-story classroom building beyond. Now we're coming into the cafeteria. To the left was the kitchen entrance. Here's the main cafeteria. You get a sense of the big windows that look out to the site. This is the auditorium. We're coming back in here. There's about 490 seats in the auditorium. It gives you a sense of how we have that designed. And now we're coming back out towards the main lobby, and you're starting to see the exterior of the planetarium. And you're looking down the main hallway towards the collaborator space into the 3-story classroom wing. And I'm going to jump to that file next. I want to be careful because these files are very big, and if I open them too quickly, I'll crash the computer, and then we'll have to wait to get it queued back up. But here we go down that corridor towards the large group collaboration space. And if you notice, the windows are a big deal at the end of that corridor because you have such a beautiful view out towards Sandy Creek. Here we'll take a quick look into the library. That's the main entrance to the library. And now we'll approach the collaborative space. And if you recall, there's two collaboration spaces here that are divided by a movable wall, so you can open it up into one big room. Here's the second collaborative space. And again, you're kind of getting a sense of the view out towards the creek. And now we'll turn and go down the typical classroom corridor. It's this area that we're looking into is the maker space, which is part of the library. It has its own doorway out to the corridor. There are the lockers, the typical lockers. They're extra wide for book bags. They're too high. And there's a collaboration space in the corridor to the left. And as you look through here, you're kind of looking into the science suite. You're seeing the project area, the science lab. And as we continue down the corridor, there's a big window at the end of the corridor and a collaboration space. You get a peek into the classroom. And that collaboration space is where the stair tower would be off to the right, but there's also some tables and chairs out here, and again, a nice view out to the Sandy Run Creek. Now, I do have other videos that I can show you, but again, if you'd be interested, I can bring them up. The quality on them will suffer a little bit tonight. So these were the three main videos that we wanted to show you to give you a sense of what the inside of the building would look like. And Arif's going to speak next about the project and the project management. But before he does, I just wanted to make a comment about the cost. We've known as this project started that we were coming into a strong economy, and we knew that we were going to get into a potential situation where we were going to have difficulty controlling the bidding environment, that we wouldn't have as many contractors as we might have had on the last three middle school projects that we've done together, which have all come in under budget. So we've been making extraordinary steps to try to control the costs on this project, and that's been from the beginning of the project on. And some of the things that we've done was we valued engineered the project more so than the other three projects that we've done. We're even doing some bearing wall construction in the classroom wing because we think that we can save money with the volatility of steel and tariffs that have been causing steel costs to spike recently. We also have, I believe, on the order of magnitude of about $5 million of alternate bids that are primarily finishes, but there's also some square footage in there too, kind of as insurance policies towards the bids, that if the bids come in high, you have a way to keep the project managed, that you can get the project built. So we have gone to these extraordinary lengths. Cost has been a big factor, and I just thought I would mention that because I don't know if Arif would mention some of that, but I'm giving you my viewpoint as an architect that I think we're trying to position you so that you can control costs when you get the bid. And with that, I'll turn it over to Arif.
Actually, before that, Robin, so what are the other videos that you have?
We have probably about 10 other videos. There's the library, there's the upper floors of the classroom wing. I think we have one of tech ed. There's a couple more of the outside, maybe some still images. Am I missing anything, Michael? That's primarily it.
All right, so we'll see. We'll finish the presentation and then see how everyone feels about this.
Sure.
Crash the computer afterwards.
Keep it up there then, just in case. Yep, I got it.
So while they're doing that, I guess I got to use the microphone, right? Okay. So while they're doing that, Robin always gets to do the fun stuff, but thank you for that introduction, Robin. I get to do the tough stuff, which is the schedule and the budget and everything else that we're pulling together here. We are approximately 7 weeks away. Is it exactly 7? Something like that. I know, Bill, we're counting the days. June 11th, going out to bid. So we are imminently close to going out for bid. We've been, getting contractors lined up and doing all the other stuff we normally do to make sure we can hit the ground running. There are some competing projects, but we are ahead of them. So that's just some commentary while we're waiting for the presentation here. So we're doing everything possible to make sure we get competitive bids for your project. All right, so here we go. Up a slide. There we go. So we did that already. Robin did that. Oops, one too many. All right. So I just wanted to kind of frame out all the things that are going on this project, and I know you're aware of some of them, but I thought it would be, so since probably the last time we get together to talk about it before we go out to bid. So I just wanted to frame out all of the things that are happening. So one thing, obviously, is we're doing the ADA improvements up there. They are well underway. We're making good progress, haven't encountered any issues there. And so we're right on track with finishing those May 24th. The modular classrooms are well underway. We've been doing some work there already, getting the site prepped. Some of the work we did there forced us to look further at the geotechnical report, and we did some additional investigation over the last week because some of the materials we encountered there, although don't have much of an impact on that particular project, some of the things we saw we wanted to just revisit, and I'll talk to you a little bit about that, but that led us to that, and that's right on target. As you're aware, we brought you a 60,000, I think, approximately credit on that. So we were able to modify the foundations for that. And so again, that one seems to be right on target at this point. We're working well with the township and everybody, the modular company, to get those set up. So that work is already underway. Jill's probably seen some of the activity already, getting used to construction. So the electrical switchgear project, again, is well underway. I think switchgear's been ordered, that we got a delivery date, confirmed date. July 7th. So we're right on target with that. And, we're going to hit those dates again. So far, we're doing well with those three things. But there's a lot going on. So the next thing we're targeting right now is we're going to be issuing the bids for the road improvements that have been discussed. I know different people have been talking about the road improvements, and I know you understand what the scope is, but so I'm not going to go into that in detail unless you want to, but I did want to call out to your attention that we are issuing bid documents next week for that work, and the goal is to receive those bids June 11th. Come to the board on June 20th, and then follow up on June 24th to award that, so that work could be executed this summer also. So that is the road improvements that allow the traffic movements to occur, because come September, we're going to have new traffic movements there once we get the bids and award the contracts for the project. So we're prepping that. Been working again really well with the traffic consultant, as well as the township traffic engineer, and so all of that work is in progress. We are waiting for our final HOP permit, because that's got to go through PennDOT. And with that project, we are working with some utility providers, and I'll show you those costs. So far, we are actually doing pretty well with the utility providers. What we're hearing so far, I think we're going to be under budget on that line item, although I am carrying a heftier budget until I actually see the numbers. So that's going pretty well. So all these projects are going to be out to bid and awarded before we get to the next one, which is the main project. That's the big project. That's what will dictate where we are with the budget. And we are issuing, as we said, bid documents June 3rd. We're going to receive bids July 10th. There is also a pre-bid date. I don't think that's on there, but there is a pre-bid that, what's that date, Bill? July 17th, I think it is. So we have a pre-bid date where we will meet with all the contractors at Sandy Run, educate them on the project, give them information. So that, I didn't list that because that's not necessarily a board activity. So just wanted to make sure you're aware of those. Then we'll do a bid tabulation and review with you on July 16th. With the committee, and then we'll be coming to the board on July 25th to review those bids, and then looking to award contracts July 29th. And then from there, there's a lot of other things that happen. I didn't put them all down. We're running out of space on the screen, so then I just took you right to, we'll then finish the new building in 2022. So went from 2019 to 2022, but there's a lot of, we have the full schedule, but for you, then that's when the new building will be completed. so that that summer of 2022, they would move into the new building. And then substantial completion of the site work, which includes demolition of the main building, we have to move the modulars away, all of that is approximately a year later, August of 2023. So that kind of gives you, again, a framework of all the things we've been talking about, but I just wanted to kind of put one nice summary together for you on that. So far, I just put this here, but we don't need to spend a lot of time, but we've got multiple phasing slides, but I wanted to put this one out because for the most part, I think for 2 years, we don't really have to talk too much about it because this is what it'll be like for 2 years. So essentially the orange area will be everything to the right there. Oh, it doesn't work up there. Okay. The orange area to the right, everything there will be under construction. To the left of the orange line will be under educational program with the modulars. And you can see the new traffic patterns would be implemented that we've already talked about, okay? So that's kind of what we're going to have for 2 years. So that's really all we probably need to really worry about right now. We've got some other phases in between to get to that point, but for the most part, I think for the public and generally at the executive level, that's probably what you're going to see. Okay, so I didn't put them all in there, Mark, okay? All right. So now let's talk about costs. So what I wanted to do was first frame this out by saying the costs that we've talked about have been out there for 2 years. I went back and looked, and in March of 2017 was when we put out the $72 million plus number. That's when that number was put out, when we approved the plan cons, and that's where we were in March of 2017. So 2 years ago. Since that time, we are now at 75 plus million on the project cost, and I want to explain some of the reasons why, and also take some responsibility for why some of these costs are where they are. The big one is the site costs. When we put that budget together, we had a site allocation of $5 million. It was as simple as that. In hindsight, that could have been underestimated, and it probably was. However, the variables that I'm going to talk to you about also contributed to that, as well as what Robin said. Typically what happens is the building construction costs, because it's an overall project cost, so you move numbers from one area to another and you make it work. But what's been happening with the economy, we just cannot move on the building construction costs at this point because of where the prices are and what we feel. So there's really no budget line items from there that we can assign to the site. So that's one variable that's been challenging. The second is the building program was challenging to maintain. And so there was some growth in that area also, which didn't allow us to offset the site costs. And then, very importantly, we have encountered some situations at the site that I'll talk to you about in a minute that were not possible to predict at the time. And in hindsight, had we said that site improvement cost was 10 million, then we'd be under budget right now. But that was just an unreasonable number to put out there at the time. So I wanted to break down where the 7.9 million is, just so you have an idea at least. So there's about 64,000 of it is for fencing, barriers, and miscellaneous. The earthwork on this project alone is staggering. It is $2.2 million based on the scope. And also when the 5 million was put out, I just want to remind you, the actual site and what we were talking about doing there was a lot different than where we ended up with in many variables. Not only the improvements, but the way the building is set and what we ended up doing with the building and the phasing we came up with. The exterior improvements, the asphalt paving, concrete sidewalk, and curbing are another $3.4 million of that. And then the utilities, we've talked about the storm and all of that. It's mainly the storm, the sanitary and all is not a big number, but all of the underground utilities are basically $1.7 million. And then the road improvements, we had an allocation of $389,000, and that budget is a lot higher, a little bit higher than the 389. And I'll show you on the line below what those increases are. And so that budget had to be increased also. So the updated budget for road improvements, which we offset by the revisions we made to the design, primarily in the courtyard. You know, we've spent a lot of time talking about the courtyard, and we have an effective but simple courtyard at this point. And so what we did was we had a utility pole relocation of 75. That was not known at the time when we put the budget together that those poles would need to be moved. We are doing some mill and overlay because we've had to make some adjustments to the road widening. So as a result of that and changing lanes, adding some left turn lanes, even though we have enough width there, so we need to mill and overlay a section of the road. There's miscellaneous storm under drain, fencing, and miscellaneous. We're replacing all the fencing along Twining. And then we also added a utility allowance increase of 50,000. So there's basically 125,000 of that for utility pole, utility allocation. And thus far, our only number we have, we believe we're going to be under 40,000. But this is what we had in the budget. But this information on the 40,000 is just coming as of last week. So all of these are constantly changing. But I wanted to just keep the numbers that have been previously documented and listed. So that's where we are with that. Now, as of last week, a week ago, just to show you how things are changing on the site and how it's very difficult to predict some of this, we were designing the retaining wall. If you recall, what we're trying to do on this project, one of the things I'm challenging our team is to make sure we identify all of the issues so we get a competitive, complete bid on bid day. I don't want to come back to you with issues that we encounter. Limit those as much as possible because you don't get the best bang for your buck when you come back after the fact. It causes all kinds of problems. So we decided that retaining wall, we should actually design it. A lot of times those segmental retaining walls are a performance spec, meaning you put it out there and they're simple, the contractor does it, and he just puts it up. But on this one, because of the height and the complexity of the site, we wanted to design it. Well, when they started designing it, what we found was, and I'll come back to this slide, but I just wanted to show you. When we started to design it, the concern was that that soil behind, this is a pretty steep wall at the corner there, where you come around the bus loop. There's a concern with the soil materials not being able to be stable enough to allow us to cut back. And there's a potential that there could be some collapsing of that soil materials, which would not be a good situation. And had we encountered that during construction, that would have been a problem from a cost and everything else standpoint. So what we've decided to do based on the analysis and the design is to add some reinforcing in the soil that would basically allow the wall to be constructed without the soil being affected. That, unfortunately, has a cost impact. And again, these are estimates. We're going to competitively bid this, and we're hoping all of our numbers are beaten by the contractors and through the scope. So we're going to add that scope of work up front to be included, so there's no surprises on that. So that's that item. And that we're estimating right now at $200,000. The other item is we had some alternates. One of the things we like to do is we like to find a way to expedite the construction, move the project, and keep the project site clean. This site, there is very little room to allow mud and construction to actually start hitting the roads in the neighborhood and the adjacent lime kiln and Twining roads. Okay, so we had an alternate for a building pad. However, again, when we looked at the soil materials after it was excavated for the modular road adjustment that we're putting in, we revisited the conditions. And what happens is when the material gets wet, it is not very usable. And so our concern is, after talking to the geotechnical engineer and talking to everybody, that we believe we need to stabilize the building pad across the entire site of the building. So this kind of plan shows you that. So that entire building pad, what we're recommending at this point to put that up front in the bid is to over excavate 2 feet and put engineered fill or stone. What that does is it stabilizes the ground underneath until you actually have to dig through for foundations. but everything else can be worked off of that plane, and it keeps the material stable. They do that for roadways. Once you get the stone on a roadway and stabilize that, usually you're fine. But until that time, when it rains like we've been getting, I mean, that material would have to be constantly undercut and repaired, which would be a cost impact as well as potential extra costs and delays on the project. So that item, which we were going to put as an alternate, we're recommending right now that that be in at $285,000. That just be part of the bid. The rest of it is that same material. Our concern is we've got some areas where we're putting 10 feet of fill, and we want to reuse the material as much as possible for the fill. So that next item that you see, structural fill for building, we're still going to do that as an alternate, allowing us 6 months to accept that alternate. So when we strip the material, see what the conditions are, based on weather conditions and everything else, we can reach a decision and either move on that material being imported or possibly reuse the fill and not have to use that. Now, if we get a really good number from a contractor for that, and hopefully that number is much less, we might make a different decision right on bid day and not wait the 6 months. But again, just another thing where we just want to get this building out of the ground. And the reasons we want to do that is once I get the building out of the ground, I got steel up, okay, and we've got the site prep. Now we can look at our contingency and reduce it even further than we do maybe on bid day. Okay, so we are carrying in our number a $3.2 million contingency, which I'll go to this slide here. So we have our project budget, which you can see here. I've broken them into the big categories, and these are I've broken them down into packages, which is what you're going to actually see on bid day. So on bid day, you're going to have a general contractor, which is going to include those first three numbers: the 34.8, the 800, and the 7.9. And hopefully it's going to be much less than that. But those are that's the package you'll see. And then you'll have an HVAC, an electrical, a plumbing, and an asbestos abatement contractor. We have some fixed equipment that'll be in there. That's mainly kitchen equipment, and that actually will be in the general contractor number also. And then we had made some adjustments on scope for various things. We'd done some curtain wall adjustment, really squeezed the building down in some areas. And then the phasing and modular allowance, we already have that as a fixed number, so we are pretty much under control on that one. The switchgear number, we pretty much are under control on. And that makes up the big number. That's the number we need to focus on, the $63 million number there. Okay? The next number that makes up the 75 is all the soft costs. And most of those soft costs are known and fixed at this point, except for furniture and equipment. We have a line item for that. That's the only other big cost that's not known, and we're going to need to adjust that after we get bids and look at the contingency. And then the 12.5 also includes the $3.2 million in contingency, which is still part of the budget. Okay? So the good news is we have the contingency. The bad news is we're finding some situations on the site that we can't really offset with building costs at this point. The other thing Robin already mentioned, we went through, because of our concerns, and we've identified almost $5 million worth of alternates that will be available for consideration depending on what the bids are, what we want to do with the contingency, and what we want to do with the overall budget. So that allows you the flexibility to do that. So there's almost $5 million worth of items, and I know many of these have been discussed before, so I won't go through them in detail unless anybody wants to talk about them, but I think we need to just reserve that decision until bid day, because there's really no point, I think, talking about them right now until we know the overall number and what we want to do. So that's another $5 million there. And then I think one of the things I wanted to talk about right now is we did also get the grant. However, we didn't get the full $2 million, and the reason we didn't get it, my understanding is that they just had, their funds weren't enough, so they decided to evenly allocate the funds to the various organizations that had applied, and they just sort of apportioned it out, you know, to to that number because we ended up with 1,368,000. So there's really no other logic, and I think they've told that to Dr. Yanni. So I think that's their logic. But I wanted to remind us on what the main costs were. If you look at the main cost to achieve LEED certification there, the biggest, so the first item we already know. The second item, we already got proposals on that. We know that number, the 125,705. Our number, we know that number. That's 136,800. The other numbers are the ones that we don't know for sure, right? The 10, 40, and those are basically out of the LEED checklist, what we think they're going to be. But the biggest one there is the solar panels, 700,000, as you can see. That's really going to be the difference maker. So what we've talked about as a team is at this point to bid the solar panels as an alternate. An alternate add to the project. We might also bid it to allow us acceptance of that solar panel alternate for maybe 8 months or 9 months. I got to come up with the exact time where we think the contractor's going to have to pull the trigger on that. So we might allow for that. I've done that before, and it's worked. And what that does is allows us, after we get bids, to make a final decision on this. Because we'll know where all the bids are, all those alternates, we'll have the solar panel number. Hopefully it'll still be 700, maybe less, but it won't be more, hopefully. And we'll see what the number is. We will allow ourselves to make a decision, if the numbers speak well, to make a design phase submission to USGBC to apply for LEED Gold. The design phase submission is probably 70% of the credits that you apply for. It will give us 9 months to see the response we get and how we're hitting those credits. And then we can say, yes, we're in. Right now, with the $1.3 million grant, you're basically, almost even if those numbers are correct. So it's going to be a decision you're going to make. The one advantage you have is the solar panels are going to offset your energy costs to the tune of about $25,000 a year. So you're going to get somebody else to pay for that. That's a real number. Other than that, you'll have some of the other benefits of having a green building. But most of the design components that we're doing anyway have a lot of the sustainability built in. I mean, that's the biggest difference maker is the energy savings and the solar panel production. And we can make that decision then after we receive bids, but maybe even 9 months after that, once we see what the design phase is. Because I know one of the agenda items is that Brenda has is we did get the paperwork for that, so we do need to, we have a timeline for responding on that $1,368,000. I mean, it's not a small amount of money. It's not as much as we'd like. So it's a tough decision, but we're trying to give you, as we have through the rest of the items I talked about, the best options. That's all we can do right now. Things are not exactly perfect, and it's complicated, and we're giving you all of the options that you might need to make a final decision on that. So it's a lot of information. I wanted to cover it and make sure you had it all. And I'm sure there'll be questions, Mark, but hopefully that gives us a basis.
Yeah, all right. Thank you, Arif. Questions or comments from the committee? Sarah?
Okay, so we can start kind of where you ended with the solar panels.
Okay.
So so how does this impact the ACE grant? Say we're delaying the $700,000 or what we're doing with the solar panels. I mean, if we decide not to go with the solar panels, how does that impact the ACE grant?
So it's a great question. So what I'm suggesting we do is we get the bids, okay? Let's see where all the numbers are and what our appetite is for the various alternates, right? If we're under budget, I think you're going to be making some different decisions than if we're over budget, right? So once we get the bids, what I'm suggesting is we would have the ability to not accept that solar panel alternate for approximately 9 months, because they don't need to go in until after the roof is up, okay? And the guy doesn't need to order them maybe for 9 months, because we've got, basically almost 2.5 years to do it. When we get the bids, we're going to decide where we are with everything and say, yes, let's submit the design phase credits. Let's spend all of the 125, let's spend some of the design fee to make that submission to USGBC. We'll get feedback in 9 months on how we're doing with those credits, which most of them are done in design phase. The credit that we send in will assume we're going to buy the solar panels. And that's how the energy model will be based on. That's what we'll send in. We'll get feedback, know what our points are. We get good feedback, and we know we're going to hit the LEED gold with the solar panels. Then we have to come to you and either execute a change order to accept the 700 at that point, and we know we're going full bore. And then we've got to hit the construction phase credits, but those we will not be able to hit until the project's done. But we'll have 70% of our bet figured out.
Right.
Does
Okay.
that make sense? You know what I mean?
Yeah, so,
tough.
okay, so I guess my thought is, so if we end up saying, all right, the solar panels are coming in really expensive,
Then
we're
we
gonna
wouldn't.
say, then we don't go for it, does that mean we don't get any of the money from the ACE grant?
Correct. If you don't get LEED gold, we are not accepting the ACE grant. At that point, we would make a decision, we would write a letter back, do what we've got to do, and just say we're not accepting it, we can't do it.
Right now, where we're at, it looks like a wash based on the estimates that we have.
Correct.
That everything, the ACE grant should pay and actually have a little bit more money for, based on the current estimates.
Yeah, and the biggest thing you get the solar panels.
But the concerns, of course, is because, we don't know where all this stuff is going, and I know we've been talking about delays and that increasing the estimates. I guess my concern is it keep creeping up more and more, and it could costing more than the grant that we've been awarded.
I agree, but if you look at the numbers, that's the biggest one, right?
Right.
So we'll know that on bid day, which is, about 14 weeks away.
Okay.
Right? So I think at this point, 14 weeks away, we don't give up the $1.3 million.
Oh, no,
Right.
and even if it costs $100,000 more.
Might be worth it.
It might be worth it. That's a decision for the board to make at that point to decide how much we want to invest in, how important going energy efficient is. to the
Well,
district.
because then you'll be getting the 25,000 of solar production. It's quite a lot of solar. That roof area that Robin showed you, the entire area of the auxiliary gym, main gym, auditorium, that whole thing is going to be covered with solar panels. Very low profile. You won't see them unless you do his flyover. But good question. It's a tough one, though.
Could I just follow up, because this is part of the same thing? Maybe you've kind of answered it, but how much are we putting at risk before we have to make that decision?
The only part we're putting at risk right now is the architect portion, the 25,000, and if you remember, we came to you when we did the LEED commissioning, and their work prior to going out to bid, I think, was a little over 12,000. So the 25 and the 12, and I had come to you about that before.
Really, the part I was wondering about is the 125. Do we have to commit that before we have enough information to know?
12,000 of that. 12,700.
Just 12,000, okay.
Remember when we brought you those proposals, we actually
Okay.
had them break it out into, yeah. I can get you those exact numbers and send it to you. Okay. Where's the single page?
So, to go back to the beginning, I think you said that at the beginning, the original estimate for the site allocation was $5 million. Is that correct?
That's what I had, yeah.
Okay, and then the number that it's now, that comparison is the 7.9 million?
7.9 plus potentially that's 750.
Okay, so yeah, we're talking nearly $9 million, so that's almost doubled. And just so I'm clear, the biggest expenses or the biggest increase of the estimates have been the earthwork and exterior improvements. Is that correct? Or and the utilities, the storm lines?
So, let me just go to it. So the biggest areas have been, first of all, there's the 750 that is on the bottom here, right?
Besides that, but
Okay.
for the 7.9 million.
Right, so the
okay.
7.9, the biggest challenges we've had have been every every square foot of that site has been developed. So that's one issue. We have hardly any areas that are undeveloped or untouched. So that's one area, and that affected the earthwork as well as the exterior improvements line item. So both of those were affected by that. And then the stormwater management system was more than I could have estimated or figured out. I mean, it is just what it is.
All right, so, I mean, in your opinion, were mistakes made? Because, I mean, we knew ahead of time that this site had been developed beforehand. So, I mean, looking back, you know, what could we have done differently?
The only thing I could have done is told you it's going to be 10 million, and then we'd be under budget. I mean, to be honest with you, but at the time, you know, is 5 million, I've done, you know, multiple projects on the same level. Some of them you've visited, and the site costs are not, they're under my $5 million number. I mean, this site was just challenging. Should I have known all of that to begin with? I mean, I guess you could argue and say that, but also when you look at what the variables are that account for it, I think there has to be some of that. And then on top of it, the other factor that you have, the economy. I'm being serious with you about that. The building construction costs typically absorb some of these, you know, variables. And on this case, the building, we cannot absorb. In fact, we've been so challenged on the building, we keep beating it up to try to find some way to keep it on budget. We've not been able to take, usually I can take $1 million or $2 million from that and offset it for these other conditions, and we haven't been able to do that.
So are you having that same experience or similar experience with other projects you're currently working on?
On the site, like I said, no, we haven't been that challenged with the site.
Okay, but for the building specifically?
The building, yes, everybody is challenged with the costs of the building. Construction costs are, you know, right now they're at an all-time high because everybody is so busy. And the other factors that Robin mentioned with all of the other excuses that vendors, suppliers, manufacturers are using to increase and name their price. I mean, I am having projects right now that vendors, manufacturers are basically saying, if we're not listed as the base bid, you know, and we're talking about big manufacturers of HVAC equipment and all that. I'm not going to list any names, but they've basically said to us, if we're not base bid or approved equals, meaning we have a complete fair shot and you're doing alternates, which in this case, by the way, because of our openness of a spec, we don't have that issue. They're saying, we're not bidding it. Go find somebody else. They're not even putting a price in. So then you end up with one price, which means they name their price. We don't have that case going on here, but that's how bad it's been. They just send you emails and say, we're not going to bid it because we're not listed as an approved equal base bid. I've never seen that happen in multiple years of doing this.
Okay, so I'm not suggesting we do this, but in your opinion, if this project was delayed a year, do you expect these prices just to go up?
The way things are right now, probably. But, you know, I can't, I mean, is everyone going to be looking for work next year? That's just the tough question. I mean, right now factories are saying, you know, if you don't get your order in, you're not getting your order in. You know, they just name their price. I mean, it doesn't matter whether you're doing small projects or not. I just had a project in Whitehall. Actually, we happen to be working on it with Robin, and they've had to rebid the whole project and revamp it because it was $2.8 million of electrical work. We got one electrical bidder. We called everybody. $2.8 million. We couldn't, what they said was, you want the work done this summer? Forget about my estimator. We just have no resources to do it, so I can't even give you a bid.
When did you start seeing these, or when did these concerns begin to arise?
Over the last 6 to 8 months, it's been going like this. I mean, you guys see it. I know people have tried to call people to do something at their house, and it's the same thing. I mean, everybody's busy. I mean, all you do is drive around and you see somebody's doing something somewhere. I mean, that is the challenge we have. I mean, I wish I could come back to you and say we can reduce the building construction costs, but right now we can't. I'm worried about where it's going to be, but we're doing everything possible. The timelines we put together and even the timelines we've given the contractor to execute the work, I think is in our favor, because if you look at how we did it, the whole first phase for the first 6 months, all it is removal of asbestos and demolition of the building. So not till next year, really, are they actually bringing forces out to do the work. So I think that's going to play in our favor. I'm doing everything possible, and I do take some responsibility for, not looking at this site and saying it's a $10 million site. But, I mean, look at last week, the information I was brought on this retaining wall. I couldn't have predicted it. I mean, the geotechnical engineers didn't predict it until... So these are the challenges I have, and as I said, we've given you the $5 million also to try to manage it. I mean, that's taken a lot of effort for the design team. I know everybody here has been struggling with those decisions, so we're doing the best we can.
So any of the issues that have come up, it's not that we could have done this for less money, we were just underestimating some of these costs.
Underestimating as well as all the variables we encountered that didn't go in our favor, and as well as the economy. And our scope has been challenging to keep in check. I'll just say that. I'm not going to go into, again, I'm taking responsibility for the $5 million, and, but nowhere else did we get help to reduce anything.
I'll jump in on that. There were, this was a big, this particular line item is, the one to call out because it's one of the big ones, but at least this big probably, we originally estimated 208,000 square feet on the building. That's what Arif is getting at, and we're currently at 212. And that, that wasn't estimate, that wasn't Arif's misestimate, that was the district's, and we haven't been able to.
So whose responsibility is that? I mean, the fact that we at the very beginning, we said 208,000 right square feet, and then we're up, obviously, that, and what we've learned throughout this project is that every square foot costs a certain dollar figure. So, I guess what happened there that we're in the spot that we're at now?
Early on in the project, we underestimated the space that we needed / wanted. So, it wasn't until we got further into the project, well after we had established budget based on 208, that we realized that was the case, and that's the nature of things. It was an unfortunate misstep early on, but that's a significant cost driver as well. And the other one is schedule. We have moved slowly at times on things, and as we've seen, things have gone up and up. And if we had moved fast, it's easy. This is all easy in hindsight. If we had moved faster, we'd be in better shape.
The only other comment I'll make is, and again, this is not an excuse, but if you look at from 2 years to where we are, it's up 4%. It's not up. And with all of the things that have happened, I don't think like I said, I'm taking responsibility for the $5 million, but when you put it all together, and we still got $3.2 million contingency, so I'm not ready to jump overboard. And I think with all the variables and everything that we've been challenged with, that's not bad. But that's your call. You're the boss.
Any other comments or questions, Stan?
Yeah, Reeve, how did you come up with that 24-inch stone base footing over excavation? I mean, couldn't it have been 18 inches? Could have been two different types of the material? Save a little money?
We've looked at that, and we're still, it's a very good question. And I think right now in talking to the geotechnical, we just feel like that 2 feet is going to take care of all of the utilities and excavation, so we're going to stay above that soil material with everything other than the footings.
Could we utilize that for stormwater management, that amount of stone? I know it's underneath it would be a floating slab, no?
It is a slab on grade, yeah. It's a slab on grade, but...
couldn't utilize all that stone?
Well, you know how many utilities are going to be under that slab for all of our, everything. Power is going to be under there. There's going to be sanitary lines. I mean, look at all the sinks we have. There's going to be storm lines under there. and to try to put a stormwater system in. At this point, I think that would be really difficult and challenging to begin with anyway, but we already have our NPDS permit.
Okay,
We are actually, an approval standpoint, I should have said that, we are in great shape on approvals. You know, we did really, really well. We've got an NPDS permit, we've got township approval, we've got planning commission approval. I mean, that's something that we all thought we'd be waiting for right now and getting it as we're out to bid. So we're doing well with that. But I don't think putting stormwater under the building would be an option in there, but it's kind of a cool thought.
it's a lot of volume.
Yeah.
Would that, by putting in that stone, would that save us money in any other phase?
We are going to identify that very, very seriously to all of the other prime contractors. For example, the plumbing. We're going to make sure it's very clear to the plumber what he's going to be dealing with. The electrician, HVAC, not so much. He doesn't care too much about that. But so that they know when they excavate, they're putting the material right back. They have no issues, and it's compacted and ready. So we're hoping there'll be some offsets on that end. But again, we're going to try to emphasize that to the contractors and make sure that's very clear. It's a good point. There should be.
Other comments or questions? Joan?
Mine are more comments than questions at this point. One, I think as a district we have to admit that one of the issues we had as we were going through the design, the early design phase of this project was, you know, we had a change in administration. And because of that, I think some things fell through the cracks before Dr. Yanni got here. One of the other things I think happened, and I was part of this because I pushed for it, I think it's an important change, but I know it affected some of the design and some of the cost was moving the science rooms into the teams. I mean, I think going forward we'll be happy with that, but I mean, it did increase the schedule and the cost a little bit, and so if everybody's taking responsibility, I mean, I feel like I contributed to that one. One other thing I just thought I would mention, the MCIU is trying to redo their, they have an old building they moved a few years ago, and they were out trying to get bids, and they got very few bids, and they were all way above budget. And it was for work this summer, and there were some special considerations in that, in what they had in their specs, but they're decided to reject all the bids and to restructure the proposal, and it's for work this summer. So I don't know, another comment that goes along the lines of what Arif has been saying about what the conditions are like right now.
Yeah, I want to add, you know, we've been waiting over 2 months for construction trailers. There's such a backlog. You know, we're trying to build a hospital up in Staten Island, and they're building the superintendent. It's being managed out of the guys' cars. You know, so that's how busy it is.
Just a clarification here. When you're talking about contingency, that means that does that include furnishing and everything, or where's the furnishing piece? So.
It's a great question. So I didn't highlight that, but we have a separate line item in that 12.5 million of 800,000 right now for furniture and equipment. That one's not yet developed. I think we're going to need to increase that a little bit once we get the bids, but no, the 3.2 is separate.
Okay. So the furnishing is not the 3 point.
No,
Okay,
there's another 800. There's another 800,000.
And you're thinking that's reasonable? I mean, what is that?
We think that's probably going to have to go up about $500,000 from what we're seeing, but we're thinking once we get the bids, hopefully we can adjust from the contingency.
All right, thanks.
This is more of a question or comment for the administration. guessing it's already happening, but as a person who came into this process as a new board member, it is difficult coming in with, partial information, trying to ramp up and get on board with a project of this scope. So I guess I'm hoping that there's documentation being collected or thoughts being gathered around if you're onboarding new board members in future. I mean, we have more buildings to renovate, and a way to onboard people, but also to document some of the mistakes that were made. It might not be good at the 11th hour for brand new board members to, I don't know. It was a difficult time.
I'm just about done with the creation of a board transition document, and it has this specifically as a subsection of that report, in addition to policies and budget and everything else. This has to be part of it because, as I've said many times at this table, as it relates to the cost of this project, one of the things that concerns me is we have aging buildings that are going to need work.
I thank you for that. I think that would be really useful. As a piggyback to that, in terms of our bid strategy, we are where we are now, but we have to maximize how we go forward. We have this number, and I think you alluded to this, but I want to be clear on it, of, approximately $5 million in alternates out there. Does it behoove us to make some decisions on those now before the project goes out to bid so that the contractors are even more clear on exactly what they're getting into? Or do we just wait it out and it doesn't really impact? I guess just trying to see where that strategy is.
That's, again, a very good question, and very it's one that we're always challenged by in how many alternates do you have to simplify the bidding process. So it's a great question. At this point, we believe that the project alternates that we have are fairly simple, other than the first two. And we've already made the decision to do that. We're creating separate documents to allow the contractors to bid those. The rest of them are fairly simple, because when you start looking at the ones for finishes, they basically get a price from a terrazzo guy, and they get a price from a tile guy, and that's the difference. So it's fairly simple. The only two that are complicated really are the first two. And at this point, I think we have good documentation. We're going to try to be very clear with that hopefully that is easy for them to bid. But those are the only two that are really, the rest of them, we've combined these because, like the flooring one, we have that broken into are there 6 of them? 6 line items to, this hallway, that hallway, the cafeteria, the different areas, so we can pick and choose. But those are fairly simple. But it's a great question. I think we're fine with where we are. We wouldn't want you to give us another alternate today to add, but I think we're fine. And the solar one is simple because it's just the electrical contractor just gets a price from a solar and, has some wiring to do. So I think we're okay. Good question.
Anyone else? All right, so just as a reminder, of course, these are all estimates, and we don't really have numbers until the bids come back on, what's the date for that?
Here, right here.
July 10th. So we certainly hope that those bids come back below estimates. We're reasonably well positioned in case they don't. But let's keep that in mind, that these are estimates, not final numbers. Thanks, Arif. So Robin had it's important now in this meeting, because it's already 7 o'clock, we have the whole agenda to go through and a pretty busy finance meeting to follow. Does anyone feel like we need to see those now, or can we share those later? All right, we will share them later. All right, thank you. So let's do a community input period just on that presentation, so that then we can let the Breslin and Dewey guys go home. Sorry, I caught Brooke by surprise with that.
Yeah, no, that's okay. You can wait. I'll wait. It's fine. It's on. Yeah. Yeah, no, she was trying to start the clock. That's okay. Jen Cousins for Washington. Just questions about the solar. So I know that for the solar panel bid, we could maybe accept that bid 9 months later, but how long do we have to accept the grant? And once we accept it, and then we figure out the solar's not going to work, can we back out of it? What does that look like? I'm just curious as to that process. Because I got to be honest, that spread makes me really nervous considering every single thing we've bid has been extremely overbid. And in just looking at the numbers, even this 12.519 for the contingency and soft costs, 800s for furniture, but we just learned tonight that we'll probably need another $500,000. So it's really $13 million, right? So that's another, unless we're going to end up with a building and no furniture in it, which, you know, that happens at the end. So I just think it's concerning, very concerning. And to Amy's point about putting something together for future board members, I mean, we asked multiple times for a review of the high school project, the good, the bad, the ugly, a presentation on it, something. We never got it. We filed right to no's. A parent was allowed access. She couldn't bring anyone else in because their names weren't on the document. She was told she wasn't allowed to take pictures. She was given 2 hours with 12 boxes and told to go for it. I just have concerns that we never really reviewed what we should have reviewed and done presentations on it. I know there were mistakes made there. I mean, the mystery of the bus depot is just one of many things that probably happened that's buried somewhere in a box that no one wants anyone to see or nobody wants to admit to. I don't know what it is, but it's frustrating to trust this process when we have things like that have happened. The number for the square footage is also concerning. You know, Dr. Wheeler's not here to defend herself on that, but that is just very concerning that wasn't caught. I don't even really know what else to say. Hang on. What would harm it? We're doing a lot of load-bearing walls, so the only real harm that would maybe cause in the future is if we needed to remove something or wanted to shift the interior of the building, right, to make it 20 years from now, who knows what classrooms are going to look like. That's really the only bad part, I guess. I'm just curious. All right, thank you.
Jeannie Vitella, Ambler. I have a million questions, but nothing directly to Arif. So my Arif question, or this experts, we talk about the $25,000 per year in energy savings for the $700,000 hopeful price for the solar panels. I want to know what an honest, even if it has to be over, an honest estimate of what those repair costs are and how often they have to be, because that worries me to have all those solar panels on top when there's certain daily routine maintenance we can't seem to address at some of our buildings as it is, let alone dealing with repairing that. And I think maybe that could potentially offset that $25,000. And also the $12 million, so we hear that of the soft costs or whatever the word term is. So we just heard that in there is $800,000 of furniture. Is there any way we can kind of get a little bit more of a breakdown of that 12,000? I said 12 million. Can we get a little more breakdown, like 800 for furniture, this for that, the other thing on that number? Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, so we'll close this community input period. So I think there are some questions for you, Arif, in there. How long do we have to accept the grant? That might be the only one.
Well, the load bearing.
Oh, load-bearing walls, yeah.
And the solar panel, I guess. So the one question about the grant, I believe it's 45 days, Brenda, from the date you received it to accept it. But I think the question really is, if we, once we get bids and we do the solar panel, we go through that process of making the design phase submission, and for some reason we decide we can't afford it or we're not going to make LEED Gold, I don't believe there is any harm in, at that point, returning with the letter and just saying we cannot use these funds. We've decided that it's not feasible to execute. I think as long as we haven't taken or applied for any of the grant funds, and the way you apply for the grant funds, because we've done many of these, is when you spend on the construction X number of dollars, we usually submit for 10%. So every time we spend $2 million, we submit for 10%, then you get 200,000 back, and you do that 10 times, and you're basically, once you've spent 20 million, you've basically got your money, but at that point you're in. So I think before we do that, we will just have to have a discussion and make sure we're doing it, because we want to do it and have all our ducks in a row, as many as we can. We'll never know about LEED Gold achieving that until the end of the project, but we'll know with our design phase submissions where we are, and most of the construction ones, at that point, we'll know if we can get them, because their waste management, their materials, their, distance of materials and different things like that. So, so that's on the grant. On the load-bearing walls, the main load-bearing walls are basically the exterior, the hallway, and the exterior. So the walls in between are not load-bearing, between the classrooms. So typically, I can't guarantee this. George Jetson or something comes up later and decides we're not having hallways in a school building, then we would have to obviously make openings there. But if you're doing that, I think these numbers are going to be put to shame in terms of what it's going to cost to do a renovation like that and try to open up a school. I think open concept buildings are kind of being converted. Most of them we've converted back to normal kind of conventional classrooms, but I can't confirm that. But the load-bearing walls, I think, between rooms, we can pretty much knock them down if we had to. So that's that one. And then what was the last one? Oh, the solar
repair costs for roofing and solar panels, and some sort of annual estimate on what it takes to maintain that stuff.
All I know is we have put in multiple solar panels. Bethlehem School District, we got them when the solar thing first came out. We got them $6 million in grants. Those have been in for 12 years. They have hit every one of their milestones in terms of production. And as far as I know, the only failure issue that they've had is a couple of the, and I'm going to use the wrong word here, they're not transformers, they're inverters. Thank you, that's it. A couple of the inverters had an issue, and they had to get them repaired, and a couple they had to replace. Those usually come with a warranty. But again, if these are being paid by somebody else and you recover $250,000 in 10 years, of offset and energy costs, it'll be your final call. But I'm not aware of heavy maintenance requirements on these panels. You don't go cleaning them or washing them down or anything like that. So I think that's it.
While you're there, there's maybe a question for Brenda, but maybe you can answer it too. Have any of the published versions of the budget we've done for the project included a breakdown of the soft cost?
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, I do actually have it
I'm
here.
sure they must have, right?
Yeah, so it's this sheet we've been handing out, and they're all listed there.
And PlanCon contains a lot of that information, too.
PlanCon forms had them.
What has been board approved and filed with the state.
Yeah, but generally speaking, it has everything from site survey to geotechnical, to our fee, to the architect's fee, to builder's risk insurance. There's a line item for project financing. That's a big line item. There's everything from approvals and permits. There's line items for construction testing, even a line item for lead submission fees. There's a line item for printing, movable fixtures and equipment we talked about. Water and sanitary tap-in fee, which we have a line item for that. Art keeps challenging me about updating this, and I keep telling him, let's wait till the $62 million number comes in. But there's for example, $150,000 for that. I don't think there's going to be a cost for that. So those numbers, so there's going to be some adjustments, but I'm really more worried about the $62 million than all of these individual soft costs. Most of them are known, and most of them are going to be under the numbers. The contingency with the furniture, we've known that all along. We just don't want to take from the contingency until we have all the information and reallocate some of these soft costs. But those are kind of the general numbers, if that helps.
There was a comment that everything that's been bid has been overbid. Certainly that was true for the modulars. And, you know, we know that there were wildfires in California going on at the time we were looking for modulars, and so every modular building in the country was going to California. But has that been true for other things? Have other things come back? We really haven't done a lot of bidding yet.
The switchgear was under, the ADA improvements were under, but I'm worried about the 62 million. That's where we got to hit. Yeah, thanks.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Stan, go ahead.
Reef, when would be the earliest that we would submit for reimbursement on this grant?
My recommendation would be that we're going to wait that 9 months or whatever it takes for us to make that design phase submission, get our comments back from USGBC, and make sure we're hitting those points before we start really accepting the funds. Well, asking, yeah.
Yeah, would it be, could we reapply for this next year?
They already are, that's why they gave you what they gave you, because they're, I think, out of money. So
Okay.
if we gave it back, I don't think we're getting it.
Well, I mean, has there been, in your experience, had like other schools or applicants like said, we didn't want the money and therefore it goes to a pool and then they divvy up?
That could happen, but most people are not giving it back right away. I do know one other school district that is considering giving it back. And I think they're going to pretty soon because they didn't get the 2 million.
And would the state redistribute those funds to the grant winners?
It's possible, but I think they would go through another application process.
I spoke to a gentleman, Mr. Welker, at the state several times about the grant. If any of the districts do give back the money, there would be another full application process. That was one of the questions, would we get the balance? But the answer to that is no, without going through another application process.
All right, anything else? Okay, let's move on to the heart of the meeting. Thank you for you and your teams for coming, and appreciate your being here. And you're always welcome to hang out, you know. You're also allowed to leave, yeah. I don't think so. All right. Are there any announcements or communications?
Not this evening.
All right, and we have minutes from March 21st. If anyone has comments on those, please get them to Brooke. Let's dive right into the high school classroom AV refresh. Is that Phil? Who's,
It is.
yeah.
There we go. Here without presentation, just to answer any questions. This was presented as part of my budget presentation back in October. We have spent the past 3 years playing catch up with a strategic plan for refreshing our classroom audiovisual capabilities. We needed to do some expeditious catching up over a 3-year period to do the entire district. Most of the equipment we had was past end of life. After we refresh the high school, we will move into a sustained 5-year cycle, so that those things are predictable, just like our network infrastructure. So mapped everything out so that we have predictability built into budgeting moving forward, with this snafu of trying to, the bubble of Sandy Run, and then down the road, there will be impacted by any other building renovations that we do, but we have that built in. So there's a plan for that as well. I budget conservatively. I put that into the motion, that budget conservatively, and then Ms. Bray has taught me to be a negotiating shark. I really like that part. It's kind of fun, yeah. So.
All right, any comments, questions, or negotiating sharks on the board? Want to take them on? Okay. So we're ready to move that forward. Actually, I do have a question.
Sure.
In one of the documents, the Microsoft office quote. So we've got Office 2019. Oh, I see. Now, my question was why was it there twice? There's Mac and Windows why it's there twice. So we've got 85 Office Professional, and that's it. We're not doing any of the other things. They're just this is a product pricing list. I was trying to come up with where
those go with the micro PCs that we have. We buy perpetual licenses, so we will buy a license, and then if we have to replace the PC, we move that license. But now, instead of moving over a Windows 10 or whatever version of Microsoft it was now, it was 2016, where we move over the current version, right? So that 2019 license will be a perpetual license that we can move around as we need.
These are Office staff? Who's using these?
So it's the Office suite. So when we put in that classroom AV, we're still at a point where we have teachers who, in any context, may need to leverage Office. That is fewer and fewer and fewer and fewer, right? And we will have those many more teachers who say, I'm never opening Office, and then I can take that perpetual license and move it into the business office or move it around, play that shell game as people wane away. But tonight I came in and there was a science teacher working in an Excel spreadsheet, and they were doing things that I do in Google Sheets. They're just developing their capacity, and there was I know. And okay, right, we'll get you there. We're fine with making that investment as a bridge tool for users.
Okay. Any other comments or questions on this item? All right, we'll move. Oh, teacher, sorry.
So are you actively encouraging people to wean off, or is this more organic?
It's a mixture of both, right? To me, what's really important is what the skills and capacities that we're developing in all of our learners, whether they're adult learners or children. And so I have data analysis in Sheets, data analysis, composition and word processing, and presentation. These are the skills. The platform that they do it in, Google presentation, a PowerPoint, a Prezi, that's ephemeral, right? That will constantly evolve and change. We picked G Suite for Education because the one thing it does better than anything else is collaboration. And that is powerful in the classroom. And so that work with kids and the fact that that ecosystem is Chromebook and G Suite, that's moving the adoption. And so that part is very organic, the work with kids, right? Yeah, answers that question.
Anyone else? Okay, so we'll move that forward to the legislative. Stan? Yeah? Art? Okay. All right. Next up, the ACE grant acceptance. So this is accepting the ACE grant, if I understand it. This is a 45-day requirement that Arif mentioned. This doesn't necessarily mean we're getting the money until we spend money that qualifies for it, right?
You are exactly correct. We would have to ask for reimbursement, and there's even a repayment clause that's very much laid out in both the letter and the grant as to what has to happen if we don't spend it.
All right. Any comments or questions? All right, so move that forward. Yep, okay. Additional surveying services for Sandy Run. Bob?
Yes, this is for land grant surveyors. For the road improvements, we need to determine all the right-of-way points for PennDOT in the township. PennDOT along Limekiln Pike and the township along Twining Road, and survey those points for when we do go to do the road improvement. It's for ratification. They have begun this process. It's $6,000.
All right, comments or questions? Stan?
Would it be better to have the township do the surveying? I mean, would it be cheaper that way if they did it, or no?
No, I don't believe the township would be, because they are looking at, I believe this is including some of the easements that they need to be looked into. along with PennDOT as well. So it's not just the township, but PennDOT utility right-of-ways that go along in this with PICO, Verizon, Stormwater. There's been some dealing with Aqua as well.
Anyone else? Okay, move that one forward. Design and bidding services for hazardous material removal at Sandy Run.
Yes, Element Environmental, as they're completing their survey of the schools to determine any possible hazards, looked up any asbestos. They're all testing the caulk for any PCBs, lead. They're looking, so we should have that final report shortly. So far, I think we're going to be happy with what they're finding. Some of the possible areas we're really not seeing what we could have potentially have seen. So for $4,995, they will create the bidding documents and perform the bidding for the removal of all the hazards that have been identified. This is both the annex and the main building. Originally, we were going to look just bid the annex right away, but Arif pointed out it would be better to bid both buildings at the same time, so we will have the cost going into bidding and what the remediation will be for the main building as well.
And to be clear, correct me if I'm wrong, we know that there's some, they're just looking for more, right?
They're looking for more. Any potential place they search. We cored holes through the roofs to look at the insulation material. We've gone in the closets and pulled up baseboard and poked a look under the gym floors to see what those materials were, really looking what the sealers were between the wood and the concrete. They've peeled off some blackboards in places to look at what the glue was, to see what holding the glue is, and they've taken the caulk sampling from around our windows.
Okay, any other comments or questions? All right, move that one forward. Oh, sorry, Stan?
Yeah, Bob, is there any of this, after they come out with the bids, all right, for hazardous material removal, correct? Does that include like fluorescent lamps and all that, or is it just asbestos?
No, it's anything that's on the hazard list. It's going to be our asbestos, any lead, handling lead, again, the PCBs, in any caulking. And we don't have any more ballast or transformers left that would have contained that. But no, it wouldn't be any of the light fixtures. Right now, we have been buying the low mercury fixtures, lamps anyway. That's what's been on the market. So we are good at that, and that's not regulated at this point.
Okay, so move that one forward. Radon results for second round results.
Yes, for initial rounds of testing, we had 3 rooms, 2 at Thomas Fitzwater, 1 at Jarretttown Elementary, that were above the 4 picocurie limit. So they just no health effects were suggested with this. They just recommended looking what's going on in the rooms and doing a retest. So we sent our HVAC mechanic in to look at those rooms again. Found 1 damper that wasn't working, and found a couple blocked inlets just from the fall, the leaves that blew in during the winter, jammed some of the air intakes up a little bit. So we cleaned those out and retested. Everything has come back under the 4 picocuries, and we also had tested 1 additional room that wasn't tested originally at Jarretttown Elementary, just because it was adjacent to the room that had the higher number. The reason this room wasn't tested, the canisters that we use, that ABE Radiation Labs uses, they're good for 2,000 square feet. And our classrooms are typically 800 to 1,000 square feet. Some are even smaller. So they did stagger where they put some of the canisters, just because there was an overkill of saturation with the canisters based on the square footage. So we just thought we would test the room next door just to be on the safe side. And that room came back on the initial results as fine as well. It came back at 0.7 picocuries per liter, so it tested very well.
Does this mean we are done talking about radon?
Yes.
All right.
For now.
Any other comments or questions? Ticia.
Success.
Okay, so now that we look like we're all good, are you doing anything in terms of preventive maintenance on a regular basis to make sure that we're staying there? So it's not just the one thing we're done, but as you said, we cleared some ducts or
Yes.
moved stuff out of the way.
Yes, maintaining the ventilation is the most important component. We have some ideas what we need to look at. We've been working on bringing some companies in to help us with our preventive maintenance. We're not fully there yet. This year we've let our first preventive maintenance contracts out for high school equipment, and so that will free up some of the staff of our mechanics time to look at other areas, and we'll address if we need to continue to bring in. We did use money last year over the summer, knowing that we were going to do the tests. We figured instead of testing, having failures, and retesting, and again paying that money, let's bring somebody in for preventive maintenance. It was much more inexpensive than I expected, so that is a potential as well.
Anyone else? All right, moving on. Construction of accessory building at the administration complex.
Yes, last summer we tore down one of the accessory buildings on the administration site. It was falling down. We received bids to make repairs, and it was just too costly. So I've been talking with the township, what could we put back on the space without triggering any, looking at our land development, stormwater management, or even for building codes, adding things to the building that we don't need. And we came up, we could put in an accessory building that's 1,200 square feet, which is a nice sized building. It's a 30 by 40 building. We're looking at pole barns, very simple to erect. We're looking at a very basic, just a man door and an overhead door or sliding door, and something that'll match the current buildings that are there now. Really just a metal siding, be white and green roof, metal roof, to match all the buildings that are currently on the site. I was very happy with the prices that came back. They range from 13,631 lowest to 15,225. Each company has some little differences to them. The company I would like to go with was the higher of the prices, the 15,225. That was Shirk Pole Buildings. The reason I would like to go with them is I've talked to people in the township who use Shirk Pole Barns, and so being that they already work in the township, they know the codes that they have to meet, they know the submittals they have to make. They've done work in this environment, so I think it'll be a much smoother process if we use Shirk.
In terms of the product, you'd be happy with any of them? It's really about the
In terms of the
process.
product, yes. Unfortunately, I was able to go around and see these products for Shirk. I talked to somebody who had some experience from a storm damage where they came back very quickly and made repairs in one day because of a tree that had fallen on the building. They were able to make the repairs very quickly.
Can you remind us how much the bids came back when we bid this last time?
I think we were in excess of $90,000 to put a new roof on because it was pulling the old rafters down and putting new trusses up. So it would have been over $90,000 to repair the old building. Now this building, the old building didn't have any utilities going to it either. It was also only a 3-sided building. We're still not looking, we're just looking for cold storage of equipment, somewhere safe that we can lock things up. And so we're not, at this time, we're not looking at concrete flooring at this time. We can add it later. We're not also putting any utilities into this building. It is sitting further back on the property, and it would be required trenching to get anything to it.
And you're planning to leave the soil as it is leading up to it, no driveway or gravel driveway or anything?
That's
right?
correct. The soil up to it's pretty well compacted just from the traffic in the past. When we tore down the last building, we asked the contractor when they dug out the foundation to fill the site in with stone. So we already have a base in place for the new building because of the demolition.
Sarah?
I'm trying to remember because my memory's apparently bad now. I think we did this. Did we do another pole barn before, or was this the only one that we looked at? Because I remember talking about the base before. If this was all just the same building, or if we'd.
This was all the same building.
This was all the same building,
We've been talking
right?
about this, but we've been focused on other projects that we put this off to the side.
Yeah. Had we gone out to bid for a new building before on this, or was it just for the repairs?
No, it's just repairs.
Okay.
It was a demolition and repairs, then a demolition.
Okay. Thank you.
Stan?
Is this going to be sitting on footers, or is it just going to be sitting on the ground?
Oh, they'll put the poles will be direct buried into the ground, and it'll be up above the crushed stone. We can go in at a later time and just put concrete bases in if we really wanted to. If we wanted to set up shelving sometime down the road, very easy to go back in and fit it out with a concrete floor that would go up to the base.
So what's going to be anchoring it to the ground? You're saying you're putting in
The
what,
poles are
all thread?
No, the poles are actually put in as footers. The vertical poles that they connect everything
Get
to
out.
are actually used as footers into the ground.
Wow. So then we would put, in the future, you can just put a concrete slab in there 4 inches.
Correct. We did get pricing for that, but to move the project along, it would have put us over bid limits. It would have put us dangerously close to prevailing wage. So we can do this now. We can live with this for quite some time at the way this is.
Okay, what is going to be sitting on the ground? You know, the poles are in the ground. What's going to be sitting, what's going to be like the leveling plate or whatever is going to be around?
They'll just have a ledger board going around.
Ledger board, pressure treated lumber?
Correct. I believe actually the ledger board is actually another piece of steel. The steel is rated for 40 years. It's pre-coated.
Mm-hmm.
Any other comments or questions? Move this one forward? Nods? Yes? Okay. And discuss summer projects.
I just want to bring up what we're planning for the summer. The projects have all been bid already. The largest project will be the windows at Fort Washington Elementary School. This is a 2-year project. The two-story classroom wing is what we're concentrating on this summer. That's including removal of the windows. There's going to be abatement to the asbestos panels, and the new panels coming in for the windows will accommodate the air conditioning, which was our next project, putting window air conditioners into Jarretttown, Thomas Fitzwater, and Fort Washington. Jarretttown will have the most work. We need new electric service, not a full service. We were very lucky with this. We met with PICO. The transformer that is in place now is adequate, which was a tremendous savings for us. If we had to change the transformer, we would have had to dig out the current transformer pad and put a new transformer vaulted pad in that they require now. So the transformer there is more than enough. So Jarretttown will have a new main electric panel coming in and distribution panels through the building. Fort Washington, along with the air conditioners, we'll have 3 additional distribution panels throughout the building. We just didn't have any space in the current panels. So there will be new panels there. The electric service that we put in last year has more space, plenty of space to accommodate this, and more spare after this project is done. So we have a long life out of Fort Washington's electric service. And Thomas Fitzwater had panels put in several years ago that are sitting there empty still, and that will be adequate. So Thomas Fitzwater will be just window air conditioner installation. It didn't need any. It needs electric service or electrical work going to the windows for the receptacles, but it didn't need any major backbone improvements. The last big project, again, Sandy Run. There's a lot that's going to happen in the background, using our staff, possibly some movers helping us, but we need to, we're working right now with the staff at Sandy Run, identifying what needs to move. Teachers are starting to get instructions on how to pack, what to pack. So we're going to be spending a very early part of the summer emptying Sandy Run. We need to have it emptied so in July they can start abatement, getting hazardous materials out. So then as the contractors come on board or mobilize, they can go right into the demolition phase of this building.
So they're identifying what's going to move. So there's also presumably identifying what's not going to move, and what's the plan for all that stuff.
Right now, we started on obsolete list. For the legislative meeting on Monday, you will start to see obsolete equipment. Phil's given us a very detailed list of what electronic equipment will be obsoleted. We have lists from the school, what furniture we'll be able to move, what we're going to keep, what we're going to move. Our staff has done an excellent job just going through since last summer, just identifying what needs to move from the building. Some of it we were able to get rid of already, move out. We had our maintenance employees, 3 maintenance employees were using a room at the middle school, as their workshop area. We have relocated them already. And this is where the storage building behind administration will greatly help too, because our plan is to have them stage their base operations instead of being at Sandy Run, will be at the administration building, which will also help us with supervision. So we've been moving a lot already, identifying. There's not as much coming out of there as I thought. We're just looking at the plaques that are on the walls, what we want to take with us. I was surprised after surveying the building, we couldn't find a cornerstone. Fully expected that there would have been a cornerstone with possibly a time capsule in it. We haven't been able to find one yet.
So from the board's point of view, we should expect to see this come through the obsolete lists monthly. We should expect those to grow relative to what we normally see.
Yes.
And from your point of view, there's just going to be a lot of work in disposal or resale or whatever, probably
A lot of work in
disposal.
We'll determine what's going to be left as scrap for the contractors to remove. The lockers, there's no need for the lockers anywhere. It costs too much money to try to remove them, but that'll be a nice value to anybody bidding on the project. If they see that metal during demolition, they'll factor that into their pricing.
All right, any other comments or questions? Summer projects? All right, so we are up to the regular community input. If anyone would like to address the board on any topic. No? Okay. In that case, our next operations committee meeting is Thursday, May 16th at 6 p.m. right here in the Cardinal Room, and we are adjourned.
Mr. Sirota,
Oh,
before we
I'm
go
sorry.
to adjourn, I didn't take the opportunity to address Ms. Kuznet's concerns regarding the right to know that was filed. A right to know, when it is filed, we obviously always do react to it very attentively as much as we can. Sometimes people don't know what they're asking for or don't really know what they went to see. And there was never a comparison of the project when it started for the high school to a midpoint and to how it finally was finished, other than the PlanCon documents that we have filed. I just want to reiterate that each and every individual or expenditure went through the audit on an annual basis, as well as it was audited for the PlanCon. It's very detailed. If there would have been any deviations, we would not have received approved audits on all times. Additionally, she's quite right. Individuals showed up that did want to look at the documents, and there were actually 17 boxes, not just 12, that were made available, moved down out of storage, and put into a conference room to allow the individual to look at them. And I may be mistaken, but I do recall asking the solicitor, and I do believe they were able to take camera photographs. If I'm mistaken, I do apologize, but I do know that we've permitted people to take photographs of documents under right to know. I want to be very clear on a right to know request. If we do an extensive search for documents that do respond to the right to know, but we do not need to create documents at that point in time to fulfill the request of whoever it is, whether it's a resident or someone working. This week I received one on someone working on their PhD and are doing a research project. We receive a lot of right to know requests, and we treat all of them with respect and try to be as compliant as we can possibly be. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Thank you. And so we will adjourn. We'll take about 5 minutes to reset for the Finance Committee.